Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of the 49er Industry Chat. I'm going to go ahead and just allow for a couple seconds for attendees to start filtering in and then we'll get started. But in the meantime, as I always like to say, please enjoy this starting slide and get excited for the chat today. I know I'm excited. Peter, are you excited?
I am very excited. Thank you for having me, Jenna.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Jenna Quinn, and it's my pleasure as the Assistant Director of Alumni and Affinity Engagement to welcome you all to this 49er Industry Chat. Before we begin, we just need to let everyone here know that this is being recorded. And so really what that means for you is that you'll be able to view this again at your leisure. Feel free to send it to a friend or a peer or a colleague or anyone else that you think might get something from it. And you can find it at www.csulb.edu/alumni. And so since this is a webinar format, for those of you who are with us live today, feel free to go ahead and submit your questions into the Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen. You don't have to wait until the end. If a question comes into your head, just throw it in that chat box. That Q&A is not chat box, sorry, the Q&A box, and we'll make sure that gets over to our guest speaker. And so with that, I'm happy to welcome our guest speaker today, Peter Vasilion. Hi, Peter.
Hey, Jenna.
So your bio, let me get into it because it is a pretty cool one. As a student at CSULB, Peter stepped from a dream of film editing into business school, BS in marketing, with a focus on combining business process and analytics with creativity. During his undergrad, he found a passion for oral argument with the Moot Court team and started his first IT consulting firm. After 10 years in the business, he shares the way CSULB shaped his career, love of problem solving, and path towards growing companies that work with the Global 100 and create for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Awesome. So I think that I'm excited. Peter, I just want to launch right into these questions, and start this chat. So let's start off with a little bit of background about you. Can you tell me about what your life and your experiences were like before CSULB that led you to CSULB?
Sure, absolutely, Jenna. Honestly, growing up, I grew up in a household where technology was kind of the thing. My parents had a computer redistributorship, so they, bought and sold from probably Compaq and some of the older, more like the legacy companies that got swallowed up. Were selling business machines. And so I spent a lot of time when I was a kid in the back of their warehouse, taking apart machines, putting machines back together. And so that became my hobby. And like all good hobbies, you never want to turn them into your job. So, right.
Good, good,
The,
good advice. Good advice.
yeah, it will get there because it became my job on the other side. I tried very hard to shift into doing something a little bit more creative. So I spent, growing up doing a lot of things where it was very easy to, for example, work on PowerPoint slides and help different, the schools that I was at put decks together for different promotional activities, or they were trying to raise funds, things like that. So I was always involved in one way, shape, or form, or doing just general tech support for, my teachers on the way up. And to me, that's marketing and tech right there. And to me, it was like, oh, I like doing this, right? Why would someone tell me that I have to? So when I got to high school, where I really started to focus was how am I able to tell stories? How am I able to, I'm not a good creator of things. I am not a person who can be given kind of a blank slate and build something without having any form. I'm a great editor, And so taking someone's and working with someone on their vision and being able to hone in on that vision and sharpen it was kind of the direction that I started going, and looked at in high school, taking some film production courses, was doing some editing. There was Southern California Regional Occupation Center, so SCROC, that's over in the South Bay in Torrance. They had a course that was taught at my high school, and I took that and spent a lot of time kind of learning how to edit on. It was my first introduction. At that point, I was doing a lot of work in Sony Vegas, depending on how many people really. I don't even know if Sony Vegas at this point is relevant anymore with everything else that's on the market, but learned on that and then shifted into FileMaker, or not FileMaker, the Mac OS editing suite, which name I'm blanking on at this point. But yeah, it was an interesting getting there and then trying to figure out what I was going to do in high school at that point. Meant trying to get into film school, and being completely transparent, my grades at that point to be a film student trying to go to, USC, UCLA, even to Chapman, were not at a level that would make it easy. It would have been a fight, right? All of those schools, and even into, Cal State Long Beach's film program, like trying to get in and survive was not something that necessarily made sense. But at the same time, I wanted to try. So I spent the time to interview a number of film students and take this as, I guess, I love all the film students out there, but the conversations that I had were a lot of the same kind of conversations that I have with attorneys, which are, I do my job. I don't necessarily like my job. And at that point, I didn't want to be just doing like DIT work on set or trying to fight for it. And my wife is actually, she's been in the indie film space since she was 16 years old. So she did that whole thing. And her stories don't make me feel any worse for having chosen otherwise. So then I shifted and made the choice. I had studied abroad 2 semesters in Greece, and had enough units and credits to immediately apply into the business school at Cal State Long Beach, found the marketing program, and that was kind of my jump immediately into, this is where I want to be, in my focus of trying to get my degree and get to work was really kind of the mantra at that point.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that makes sense. You may have a certain passion, right? But that doesn't always mean that that's where you need to go. And I think that's a great point. And I also love how in deciding what you wanted to do, you interviewed
Mhm.
students. So I imagine, did you pay that forward when you were a student at CSULB? Did you talk to younger students, or what was your experience at CSULB like?
So speaking to younger students, one, my experience at Cal State Long Beach was phenomenal and continues to be phenomenal, in continuing to interact with some of the individuals that I'm still in touch with in the Cal State Long Beach Moot Court team, and also just some of the students that have graduated. I have the pleasure of actually employing a CSULB student who came up through the IT and Management Info Systems program. So, Cal State Long Beach continues to provide a really great experience when working with staff and students over there. Having to impart the knowledge. Probably a bigger learning is not even the fact that I had that jump from what I would consider, I made the right choice for me at that point of marketing, or into marketing and business. Where that came in the mentorship was actually with the Cal State Long Beach Moot Court team post graduation. I spent 2 years or a year and a half as an assistant coach or a supporting coach. However, my involvement, I guess, can be labeled at that point. But that was where I spent a lot of time getting to understand, because I had attempted and wanted to go to law school out of undergrad, and had my experiences with taking the LSAT, had my experiences with trying to understand the same thing of what the legal profession was going to be like, whether it was appellate advocacy or, trying to do any sort of form of civil service, or dealing with specifically trying to go in-house. A number of the people that I went to school with are in-house counsel at a few very notable companies, and a number of them are in the Attorney General's office, the AG, and can't be more excited to know that they're doing all this great stuff, and a number of them are in public interest as well. And so there are moments where I have watched all of those people that I graduated with have to fight things like student debt and taking on a kind of a very large burden in order to get where they wanted to go. And watching those students honestly try to dig themselves out from underneath that it was one of the things that made me choose not to go to law school. And it's the same conversation that I have or had with some of the students that I was coaching at the time. This is a decision you really want to make. This is a decision you have to commit yourself to, because it's not a job that, based on the conversations with other attorneys that I've had at, top international firms that are pulling in, millions of dollars a year as partners, they are not particularly happy in their job, and they feel that they don't have necessary ownership over their time and their life, and you really have to have a passion for the law to make it a worthwhile kind of track. So that kind of advocacy and pushing students toward a path that works for them, and paying that forward as I figured things out, that was where that came in, much more so than while I was trying to talk to incoming freshmen, let's say, as I was further along. I think on the flip side of that, in many ways, business seems to be just like a medical degree or a degree in law, seems to be a fallback for a lot of parents. And it's very interesting to see how that's changed generationally. And so what I would say is marketing seems, or business seems to be a catch for a lot of those individuals who don't necessarily know what they might want to do, but having a good understanding, some business fundamentals is helpful. So I can't say that there was someone in the business school who came in that didn't want to be there or wasn't trying to figure something out while they were there. But there's not a whole lot of commitment on the other side of that to kind of defer someone away from. So hopefully that's that's helpful, but it's just an interesting, like, seeing the dichotomy of students between the poli-sci program and the business school was very interesting. And also, bear in mind that I did not do a lot of traditional undergrad courses. I was able to shave off a substantial portion of my undergrad. I elected to stay an additional year for, competing with Moot Court and some other classes that I wanted to take. But or an extra semester, I should say, but I had gone into the business school already. When I came in to Cal State Long Beach, you had to first take your undergrad, your GEs, and then you had to apply back into the business school. I was able to get into the business school right away. So I did not wait the 1 to 2 years before having to hit my business classes.
Right. Yeah, no, I know that that's definitely something that's on folks' minds, so I think that being able to bring in those credits and get those elsewhere, I mean, I think that's a useful piece of advice. But you as you talked about, Moot Court and that kind of that path not taken, I kind of, thought to myself, well, clearly though, there's got to be some transferable skills there. So I kind of want to ask you, what was that uh what was that transition like after CSULB and going into to your journey? So feel free to talk about that. But then also, you know, how do you find that Moot Court has helped you with your degree in business or with your career
Sure.
in business?
as a question that everybody, I think it's like the $1 million question. Why did you do this? What I would say is, I think the biggest skill that, and the thing that's continued to help me on the other side has been the application of critical thinking skills in just a workplace context. I've had the pleasure of interviewing people who are infinitely more intelligent than myself. And I'm happy, and it's great to talk to people like that, as long as I'm not boring them. But on the other side of it, it's the critical thinking and the application of that knowledge that really turns someone into an asset to a team. And it allows growth within a company or growth for a career. And that's something that in some cases just really needs to be fostered more effectively for students. A lot of times it's not a core skill. And I would say Moot Court forces that on you. You really don't, if your goal within Moot Court is to be successful and to participate, you really have to have the ability to dissect large amounts of information quickly while also responding to rapid fire questions from individuals who, in some cases, actually, and I'll go into kind of Moot Court, what Moot Court entails in a second, but there are individuals who may have actually argued those cases before a judge at some point, who know those cases better than you do. And being able to think on your feet, it's the same as in business. There are individuals who know more than you do, and you're all collectively trying to work toward a solution. And having that skill, that critical thinking on your feet is something that's absolutely invaluable.
Awesome. So going into IT consulting, right? I know that you talked about when you were a student, you were always kind of, or a high school student, you were always helping your teachers and troubleshooting in that way. But as far as going into your career in IT consulting, was that an intentional journey? Is that where you knew you were going to go when you were a CSULB student, or did you find your way there?
No, so that was it was a very interesting, very serendipitous at that point. What ended up happening was, like I said, I'd spent a lot of time dealing with different technology issues for teachers, parents, right? Everybody does the kind of slog through the family first. It's like, oh, you know how to use a computer, you can fix my printer, kind of a thing. And no, we don't know how to fix your printer every time. And it's like nails on a chalkboard. But what ended up happening was there was a family member, a family friend who had they were doing some IT work, IT consulting, and they needed another pair of hands. And this was my junior year at Cal State Long Beach. And what ended up happening was, they brought me on board. We had sat down and had a few conversations, and they realized, oh, he might know a thing or two about what he's doing here. And in my head, it was a stepping stone to where I wanted to be. And I think that's something that a lot of people may not be prepared for, is you might need a stepping stone job or a stepping stone career before you get to the end game, whatever that happens to be. And that's what IT consulting initially was for me. I looked at it as the stepping stone toward whatever the next thing was going to be, whether that was going and working for a larger consulting firm and getting into the strategy side of things, or furthering my education in analytics so that I could go focus more on marketing and creative and just be like that tech arm, kind of wedged into the marketing pipeline, into the marketing feedback loop. And I ended up coming under this person's wing, and the time I spent there was just getting to learn the ins and outs of how to be an employee, which is a very different thing for myself. I had spent actually 3 years of my undergrad were with the Cal State Long Beach bookstore, actually, with 49er shops. So this is Brian Fetterman and Sharna Weaver, who I don't know where, I think Sharna, I don't know where Sharna is, and I don't know where Brian went. I think he went to either Fullerton or Northridge, but they were my first real bosses. And so I was working there with Brian and Sharna on doing some other digital stuff for their used books, and also doing this IT consulting as the other half of kind of my work, my workload. So that was great. Picked up a bunch of learning there, and then when there was a transition away from my employer, at that time, they actually approached me and became my client directly after they had terminated their prior agreement. So I kept them on as a customer, and they are still a customer to this day, which has been great over 10 years. And it is definitely an interesting business to be in. So if being available all the time, 24/7 to answer questions about and do password resets is something that you're very interested in, getting your foot wet in IT is one of the interesting ways to go.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think that transitions nicely into the next thing I wanted to ask you about, which is, what does your typical day look like? Like, what's
So
a typical day in your industry?
what's interesting is what we do specifically at Facet is we touch pretty much anything that is digital. So if it's analytics, if it's a web application, so if, for example, this morning one of our hosting platform providers went down, so it's like now we're touching that, right? We're making sure infrastructure is up, and everything down to on the other side with our IT customers that if a mouse is unplugged from a computer, right? That's the scope of the things that we touch. And the goal is to provide this really solid foundation for businesses to be able to build on. That's one of our core pillars of our business is shoring up foundations. And that is effectively my job on a daily basis. So when I was starting out, right, if we're comparing that to today, my uh, my original day would look like getting a fire phone call from a client and running around like a chicken with my head cut off to make sure it got done. And that was, either shifting work around, trying to go on site, do whatever needed to get done when I was doing IT consulting. And one of the goals that my business partner and my business partner, Jordan Ryan, who's a UCSB grad, he and I took a long, hard look at the way that we were doing things and realized that, we are more valuable to our customers and to each other in enabling a team. So we made a very conscious shift away from the kind of working, right, as everybody says, working in the business as opposed to on the business, and shifting that perspective so that we're enabling a team of 30 people to be able to deliver on these different things, being able to tackle those fires. So when you're managing people like that daily, it looks mostly like meetings. And I think anybody in a role like mine is probably feeling like I have a lot of meetings. My whole day and my productivity gets sucked up into them, whether they're dealing or helping the team internally to unblock them, which is one of my primary functions, to make sure that my team is moving. But also it's having conversations with the customer, strategizing with the customer, making sure that we're acting like a good partner to them. So my morning starts probably at about 6 a.m. I'm reading Slack back scroll, and I'm looking through we have teams that are all over the world, Australia, India, Central America, and Canada, as far as that counts. And we have some team members in Europe and the EU. And we catch up on everything that's happened while we were asleep, and immediately, trying to get something to eat, get settled for the day, get ready, and then into, your first stand-up meeting of the day, level setting with the team, trying to figure out what blockers they have, how to alleviate that, and then into likely, again, client meetings, other team meetings if there's an all hands that needs to happen. And finally, probably getting about an hour or two in of some productive work, whether that's like productive work, whether that's working on a marketing piece, doing QA on some copywriting, or following up on some sale, like customers for sales opportunities, account growth, writing out and building out a new solution, working on solutions architecture. It, that usually gets slotted in where it can, but the majority of my week and my life is governed and dictated by my calendar.
Yeah. I think, being a CEO of this company, right? I think it must be particularly hard to find a work-life balance. Is there a work-life balance, or how do you manage that in your life?
Uh, that's a very good question. Up until and up until my business partner had his daughter, which is it was very interesting, like mental shift for both of us at that point. Our perspective really did change in the way that we kind of approached a work-life balance. Um, I would say the work-life balance in my 20s was crazy, right? We're talking like 300 plus hour months, 300 to 400 hour months regularly. That was a common occurrence. It was odd that we would be working under 300 hours. We'd be working the weekends, working in a number of other areas. Whether it was networking, we were running the South Bay Tech Happy Hour, which we had probably the largest tech happy hour, aside from the LA Tech Happy Hour that's run by Zach over at Startup Coil, which is great. They're spinning their stuff back up. So if you want to go network out there, I would highly recommend it. And the um, just that was almost unsustainable. Like you getting to the end of your week and you were completely burnt out. You get to the end of a month, you're burnt out. We weren't really taking vacation at that point, because we were trying to work to improve whatever system it was, whatever client we were working on at the time. We had a deadline or a project, because we were relying on each other to do that. And we were just starting to get to the point where we could grow the team. And now the work-life balance is a little bit better. The thing that we've learned to do is protect time that is not work related. So everyone talks about protecting your productivity, but also protecting your home time, whether it's with your family or friends, giving you the ability to mentally decompress. And really, it all comes down to your effectiveness. So you're just much more effective no matter who you are, well rested. And it's one of the things that we try to focus on for our teams. If someone's sick, they're not feeling well, or they're tired, they've been kept up all night by their son or daughter, and it's just like, look, take the time. We want you to be well rested. Everyone is happier. The solutions that we come up with are better. Those kinds of things just seem to function. So rest, and then on the other side is physical activity, because we spend a lot of time thinking. I think that's what a lot of the things that we do, as college students, we spend a lot of time thinking about things. And one of the things, unless you already have a good relationship with the gym or good relationship with some other type of like physical activity outside, if you're a kayaker, you like to go hiking and you make that a regular thing, so you're keeping up, whatever you can do, if whatever works for you, that's the other piece of this, is being able to take the time to be physically active, and really challenge your body, with challenge yourself with something other than just trying to hustle through something, even if it's at work. My roommate Alex Hodge, he worked he worked incredibly hard and still works incredibly hard, but he was working landscape maintenance while we were roommates, and he would come back, and I could go to the gym 7 days a week, and there was no way that I could ever look like I would be in as great a physical shape as he was when we were rooming together. That's all I can say.
So, um, so what's the most challenging part of your job? And at the same time, or on the other side of that, what's the most rewarding?
So the most challenging part Uh, Most challenging part I would say is on one hand, personally, it would be managing the expectations of a career and trying to have a semblance of, you know, a home life, humanity on the other side. Because as someone who has has is an entrepreneur or has had multiple companies and really hasn't worked for anybody else, uh, you're constantly on and constantly thinking about things. So that's that lesson, which has only happened in the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years. Like I hit my 30s and I was like, okay, this needs to change a little bit. So what I would say, that shift in thinking was a very hard lesson to learn. You know, running myself ragged on the other side, but professionally, the biggest lesson has been uh, learning how to bring people together in the correct way. And I say this, there's people who are absolute rock stars. They are phenomenal at what they do. You know, you hand them a problem and let them go off by themselves and they can produce, you know, the most beautiful work of art. It just will take time. But you put them in a team and that team just doesn't work. And so trying to figure out who your great team players are and who your great rock stars are has been one of the biggest, most difficult things I think that my partner and I have dealt with is finding how to blend those individuals together, blend personalities together so that they are positive, not causing conflict where it doesn't make sense, and being able to also recognize when we need to step in and potentially, mediate, negotiate, and make sure that everyone feels heard. And then on the other side of that, the easy part of the job is honestly, work is work. That's the way I could put it. Uh, working is the easy part of the job. Walking in and going, today I've got these things on my plate and I'm going to just execute on whatever it is. At this point is the simple part. It's the management of everything else that makes it hard. And so I don't, I guess, is it easy if you can just kind of turn on autopilot and just run and you're just like, okay, I've got to go think about this over here, go think about this over there. But that's what I would say is showing up is the easy part. Showing up is the easy part of my job. Everything else is not hard, but it's a challenge and it's fun. I get to problem solve uniquely every day, and so that's what I enjoy doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you problem solved yourself into two different companies here, right? How did you know that you wanted to have these two different, like when was the light bulb that went on that was like, oh, I need to start another company?
Honestly, so what's really interesting is we've done work with global 100 companies, and one of the things that we did was a 3D experience platform for one of our partners. And when we had met, uh, you know, as serendipitously happens when even if you're at a conference, right? You walk into a conference, you talk to a few different people, and you feel energized walking out of there if you've had some good conversations. We met these gentlemen who were, one is a very big flight enthusiast and very much into the events, like physical event space. And the other gentleman has a firm designing photorealistic 3D models for architectural projects. And we, you know, uh, so Nick, one of the partners, he mentioned that, hey, I have this crazy idea, right? I want to go make things for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And, Nick our he's our community lead, he's our CEO, he is the one who is driving all those relationships, the outward facing relationships. And so he really wanted to do this. He really wanted to have some product there in the marketplace. Microsoft, with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, has almost like an Apple store of content now. So you can buy airplanes, airports, different kinds of activities, or you can download different kinds of activities. All these things can be extended out of the base game as downloadable content. And so Nick wanted to be there. And Tom, who's our head of 3D, he basically said, "Yeah, I can make a plane look good in 3D." And then myself and my partner Jordan, we looked at it and said, we can bring the operational side of this to the table. And that's kind of how it got started. My selfish kind of part in that is I've, always wanted to be involved in the games industry. It's been something that's very interesting to me. I'm not a developer on that side. I'm not a 3D artist, but even being able to dip our toes into it, I was excited to finally have a chance to do this, and it, with a potential viable business model on the other side. And it wasn't a career shift for me. So, we sat down, we spun everything up, and we somehow miraculously found two great developers that we're working with. That would be Luke and Marwan, who have done phenomenal work. And we've had our 3D lead, Leo, who's been great. And they've been chugging away. We've launched a version of, we call it the H-Jet. And that is a business jet in the marketplace. And then we have the SF-50 Vision Jet from Cirrus Aviation. We actually have, we have a very accurate model of their plane in game, and it's been great to see all these planes in person and get a chance to scan them, do all the other things, audio recording. It's been an education on the other side, but why start another company is because it was interesting and because it seemed fun. And we have all the systems in place. We have our other company running, and it was very easy to kind of copy paste everything over and make something work for that.
Yeah, no, I like it. It's kind of full circle, right? Like, how do you marry passion with a job and your career that you can actually do, and using your skill set and your business acumen to produce something that gets that passion into the world. I think that's really cool.
It's what I would say is the best feeling is when we have a Discord community for flight effects, and I think we're up and over like 7,000 or 8,000 members at this point in our Discord. And for an indie, like a tiny little flight sim developer, right, of the pie of flight simulation development, because it's not a huge market. Different now that Microsoft has opened up Xbox Game Pass, and you can actually download Microsoft Flight Sim on Game Pass. So if you have that, go for it. Go buy our plane.
Go buy their plane, guys.
Yeah. Or happy to run if they're flight enthusiasts and you reach out. I'm happy to chat about beta testing if you guys want to get involved in beta testing our products. But we we and I've lost my train of thought. So
Hey, that happens.
Yeah, no, it's been a long week, but I appreciate you bearing with me. With flight effects, the best part, like I said, it's people interacting with your product. Like, it's the best feeling to have people who spend their time to say and take photos of themselves flying the planes that we've developed, or they're looking at. We also have done sceneries like airports, where we did Chicago Executive, KPWK, and we just launched KFLL, I believe. And we're going through, or KDPA, I believe, KDPA. But seeing people just passionate about aviation is fantastic. It's definitely something that I wasn't expecting to be doing at this kind of point in my life or career, is to be involved on the aviation side. But it's definitely a lot of fun. Our community is great. Wouldn't trade them for anything. And we have some of the best, we call them our pilot advisors. We have some of the best pilot advisors, in the sim industry. And I I wish I could hang out with them all the time.
So, and feel free to answer this for one or both of your companies, but something that's making waves in a lot of different industries is AI.
Mhm.
So I was wondering, what role does AI play in your career and in your industries? And how do you is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Neutral?
Sure. So what's most interesting about AI is, at least right now, the way that it feels is, if anybody's using it, and I'm assuming everyone at this point has, because I've got people who are taking exams that I hear from them, like I have to have my screen with this like special application. Like my younger brother's at Cal Poly Pomona, and he's got to download an app for his machine that blanks everything else out on the screen, so he can't go bounce to a chat GPT window, and they're recording and is doing all this stuff. So if you're telling me from an academic perspective, um, how is that impacting everything? It's interesting because when you're going through a hiring process or you're trying to understand someone's core capabilities and their competencies, being able to have something that may not give the most accurate answer because it's just consuming everything off the internet, that's been made available to it, but it's good enough in many cases to pass written exams. It's good enough to pass a lot of these things. It makes it more difficult as an employer, or someone who's hiring contractors to, make sure that everything looks good. Even code competency exams, checking in on people's code quality, their repositories. There's a chance that a lot of that is written with like Microsoft's Copilot, or the other part, ChatGPT does a phenomenal job of writing Python scripts and writing PHP. So it's interesting on one side. I'm also absolutely fine to talk to the people who are writing the prompts to get these results, right? There's the double-edged sword of, well, you may not be a developer because you don't understand why this works, or you don't understand how you can step through this code and explain it to me, but you were able to prompt the AI engine you gave it the right inputs to get the correct output or a close enough output. And that's valuable in some specific settings. So it's a double-edged sword from just a general hiring perspective and just quality perspective, or a skills perspective. From a business and an operations perspective, we absolutely use it. I can tell you that we use ChatGPT to generate marketing content. We use ChatGPT to write EBRs, executive business reviews. As long as and we have a policy, we are not feeding anything proprietary to to ChatGPT, because go and read the T's and C's, everybody. They're going to train off your data. So, it's a lot of, be very cautious about what you're putting into it. If you're worried about copyright, if you're worried about something that you're going to patent, those kinds of things, just be very careful that you've read everything and you feel comfortable kind of handing over that information. But yeah, we use it for a lot of content. We use it to write emails. Haven't used it in Slack yet, but we may get there. And I can say that it drastically improves our workflow. That's the best way I can put it. We have an automation that will take marketing topics, or anything else, and it will just, and closed captioning just got turned on. It's the same thing. It's going to be processing all the way through. So aside from that, you have image generation, which is very interesting. The IP implications there, as we see cases come down from different courts about IP ownership, it's a change in the way that humanity is going to create in general, everything from our science, like our hard sciences, all the way to music composition and visually creative works.
Awesome. Well, so as we are wrapping this up, I just have a one last question, and I like to ask this to everyone. Um, and if you were able to get into a magical time machine and go talk to yourself as you were just graduating from CSULB. What piece of advice do you think you would give yourself?
Aside from, I think I've told my parents enough that they were right. See, I'm sorry. It's just like, be a little easier on mom and dad. I feel like that's definitely been the biggest thing that I'd go back and tell myself at this point is um, even though it might be easy, it might not be right. Like even though it might be the easy track to take or the easy way through a problem, it might not necessarily be the right way through it. And part of that is I can give the example of my study habits all through high school and college, which I have a fairly most of the time sitting through a lecture, I have a decent enough recollection of content and material to not have to do a bunch of additional work. And the problem with that is that at the point at which you have to actually do the homework and build everything, you then have to build those skills. And not focusing on that because there was an easy way to shift through that toward where I wanted to be meant I didn't have those skills less necessarily and had to start developing like my senior year of college and getting out into running companies and how to do research there. Um, and the easy way at the same time was also not recognizing that maybe some of the other avenues that I wanted to take were diversions from doing harder work and getting to other places faster. And so that would be the big piece I would tell myself is just take a step back, look at it, it's worth it, even though things don't look certain. There's no guarantee that you will be successful or that you will have what you want, but just the easy route isn't going to get you there most of the time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for that piece of advice and for all of your advice today. I think that this was an awesome chat. And so for those of you folks who are in the audience, if you want to see this chat again, if you want to see what we're up to for the next chat or the next program, please feel free to follow us on any of our social media channels, as well as visit us on our website at www.csulb.edu/alumni. But Peter, if folks were looking to continue the conversation with you, how might they be able to get in touch?
So the easiest way to get in touch with me is a lot of CSULB students have already reached out via LinkedIn. So that's linkedin.com/in/P Vasilion. Take a look. I think there'll probably be a link in chat for you guys. And then you can use my email, peter.vasilion@facetinteractive.com. And if you're interested in checking out Moot Court or have questions about any of the other programs that I mentioned, there's also the marketing in-house or internal marketing agency club. I'm more than happy to give perspective on all of that. And also happy to chat through questions, concerns about where you're at. If you have specific career questions, I am pretty open and can work to set some time aside for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Peter, again. And for those of you in the audience, please feel free, reach out to Peter. Alana did go ahead and put the link in the chat. But thank you so much for joining in. And Peter, if you can hang